So when somebody makes a claim
Yes.
and somebody makes an argument, you shouldn't just believe in them haphazardly.
Of course, of course.
So in science, we have something called the falsification test, yeah, by Karl Popper. That you're aware of the falsification test, yeah?
No.
So let's just say a hypothesis is put forward. Your aim is to prove it to be false.
Yes.
If you can't prove it to be false, then by default it's true. It becomes a theory.
I guess, yeah, but that doesn't work with metaphysics questions. Because
Yes.
in metaphysics, the problem is that you can't really.
I agree with you. I agree with you.
The
But
same
it's
with
not
God. I don't think you can prove God, but you cannot really prove that he's not real.
right.
I
Right.
think that's a big problem with God.
When it comes to falsification,
Yes.
the points that you made, there was a little smirk because I was like, the exact points that you've made, I can see the sincerity because those same points have been addressed in the Quran. Yeah, for example, God says in the Quran, and you can check this again, it's on camera. If the Quran was from someone else, there would be loads of contradictions in it. So this is a claim by God. God is saying this himself.
God
So-
thinks this of itself, or Muhammad says God says that.
So the Quran, we believe, is the word of God. Yeah, because there's different ways that we can prove that it's not actually the word, like it's not Muhammad saying stuff from himself, because there are different verses, there's various things that actually don't make him look too good. Yeah, for example, he was speaking to somebody of a high stature, and a blind man came, and the Prophet, peace be upon him, got kind of annoyed. He was like, look, because the blind man doesn't know what's going on, so the Prophet wanted to complete his discussion with the person, and then the blind man had come, and the Prophet he was kind of annoyed. Then Allah revealed to the Prophet that wasn't very well. I'm paraphrasing that wasn't very nice of you, because how do you know that that person may be more receptive to guidance than the person that you're speaking to? Do you see?
Yes.
So we have compounded evidence to suggest that it doesn't make sense that the Prophet is saying it, because if the Quran was for the Prophet, peace be upon him, there'd be ways that the Prophet would, number one, use it to gain riches. Number two, gain like favors from the people, possessions. But he was very poor. He didn't leave, like there was no inheritance that he left behind that was supposed to be distributed. He was very poor, like he would sleep in a house that had barely anything in it, and he would lie on like a date palm leaf. To such a degree that companions would see him and you'd see the marks on his back. So the thing is, when it comes to riches, one kind of historian says, for us to say this actually raises more issues than it solves. To say that, look, so logically, and even the way that the Quran is, like if I was to tell you some numerical kind of intricacies of the Quran, yeah, let me give you one numerical kind of intricacy. The chapter of Noah, yeah, is chapter 71. It has 28 verses. 71 minus 28 is 43. 43 is the amount of times Noah is mentioned in the whole Quran. 43, like that surah, that chapter, 43 chapters before, he hasn't been mentioned. 43 chapters afterwards, he hasn't been mentioned. How many times has he been mentioned? 23 times. Nuh is the Arabic word for Noah. Nuh is a 3-letter word. The first time Nuh was mentioned in the Quran was chapter 3, verse 33. The chapter of Noah, the first time Noah comes along is the 3rd word. The mention of Noah is 3 times. So when you look at this numerical precision of the Quran and the fact that it was revealed circumstantially, like you would ask the Prophet something, and the Prophet would wait for a revelation and he would answer. So because it was circumstantial, and because there were so many people, we have historical records of the discussions that took place in Arabia, there would be so many contradictions. No, he lied, he said this, he said that. Because naturally, when it's a woman that claims to be a prophet here in the park, people will find contradictions.
Yeah, that was I just want to ask you, if somebody now came up to you and said that the same that Muhammad said back then, that he had spoken to God, and that he now has a vision of what is good for humanity, would you call him a liar or would you follow him?
We would call him a liar based upon, well, based upon what we like. If you accept the necessary being, you accept the revelation, yeah, you accept that prophets have been sent. In Islam, after that, the compounded evidence that we have, naturally it makes sense for us to accept revelation, what God has said as well. Yeah? Because if God makes sense, his prophet makes sense, his book makes sense, we accept that that book is from God, the teachings are from God, because we have the inference to the best explanation, we have the cause, we have the kind of compounded evidence, because one follows from the other. Then it makes sense. Okay, what does the revelation? The revelation says prophets have come and prophets have gone. Here are the prophets. Okay, there's certain testable things. But then it says Muhammad, peace be upon him, is the seal of the prophets. That Muhammad was the last of the prophets. La Nabiya Ba'di. There is no prophet to come after him. So as Muslims, we don't believe that there is any scope for another prophet to come. There's no need for another prophet to come. Because Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, he was enough. Are you with me so far? Yeah?
Yes, I do, but do you think there was ever anyone else like Muhammad who tried to do the same thing before Muhammad? Who said that he had speaking to God, who said that he has a vision, who said that he is a prophet now?
Yeah, so that's a very good point. So when someone claims this, Jarvis, number one, you need to look at the prophecies he's making. Like Nostradamus, he claimed to be a prophet. Yeah, he said 2012 is going to be the end.
Yes.
But 2012 wasn't the end. You had you got prophecies by I Ching, the Mayans. Yeah, so the thing with prophecies is when somebody makes a prophecy or a claim, that's the evidence that they can bring. And there's certain criteria to certain prophecies. Yeah, their prophecies were very vague. So, oh, this is going to happen here, this is going to happen there. You analyze the prophecies of the individual. You look at the character of the person. Like if the person haphazardly decides to be a prophet, okay, is there a mental issue going on here? Like how are they deemed in society? The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, with him, people called him all sorts of things.
Yeah, he was banned, right? He was banished from his...
Yeah, he was banished from Mecca. They called him all sorts of things, but they never called him a liar. Muhammad, in fact, ascended the mountain and he said, if I told you that an army was coming, would you believe and accept what I'm saying? They would say, yes, then accept me as a prophet. But because there was a cultural attachment to them believing in idols and there was a financial gain, they refused. So when we analyze the prophecies of the Prophet, and we will go through those prophecies, and you know what? I'm so glad you're asking these questions. This is good. Because if you just wanted to palm me off and say, oh, he's another religious guy and this, that, I want you to ask me these questions. But when you hear a good response, I like what you're doing, you're saying, okay, that's a good response. Okay, let's move on to the next point. Because you're right. Somebody can come and someone can say, this is, I'm a prophet, I'm this, I'm that. The Prophet, peace be upon him, there's a prophecy of his. He says, at that time, the Arabs were one of the worst people. They were jokers. I'll tell you why some Arabs might be upset. Reason being, because there were two empires on the right and the left of Arabia. They were hell-bent on conquering other lands. But when it came to the Arabs, no one bothered. Because they were pathetic, they were just jahil, ignoramuses. Yeah? So the Prophet, peace be upon him, when he came to those people, one of the prophecies that he made, he said that the barefooted, unclothed herdsmen of the desert would compete with each other to make the tallest buildings. Now, at that time, the Arabs were very poor. Yeah, they were not only poor, but it was ridiculous to assume that the Bedouins, even if you look now, you go Egypt, Morocco, you see Bedouins in the desert, simple guys, you know, with camels just walking about. The Prophet said, when he was asked, they asked him, who are the unclothed, barefoot herdsmen? He said, the Bedouins. Normally, when it comes to Nostradamus and these guys, they make general claims. It can be interpreted this way or that way. He's made a very specific claim now. The Bedouins. Okay. There were rich Arabs. He didn't refer to them. There were the Persians. He didn't refer to them. The Byzantines, the Romans. He didn't refer. So the Bedouins. At that time, oil had not been discovered. Oil has been discovered in the last 100 years. They call it black gold.
Yes, I know.
Yeah, black gold. But before, it hadn't been discovered. It was unheard of. 2012, the tallest building was in Saudi, called the Meccan Clock Tower. That was at 600 meters.
2012.
2012, yeah. The tallest building in 2012 was the Meccan Clock Tower.
Not the Misha Khalifa?
No, that came later.
I see.
2012, 600 meters. 2014, that's when the Burj Khalifa surpassed it with 800 meters. And now, 1,000 meters, again, Saudi is building something called the Kingdom Tower. I think it's pretty much done now as well. It's the Kingdom Tower. So look, Dubai, Bedouins, Arabs, Saudi, Bedouins, Arabs. This was a very specific thing. And this is something that people are actually like, wow, this is actually phenomenal. At the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him, the Byzantines were at war with the Persians. Now this, whatever I'm saying, you can check this by a non-Muslim source. Yeah, it's called the Chronicles of Theophanes. He was a non-Muslim guy who verifies what's mentioned in this prophecy. It's got nothing to do with Islam, this guy Theophanes. So the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, at that time, the Byzantines were losing. Not only were they were losing miserably. Jerusalem had fallen, the capital had fallen, Heraclius was being disgraced, and the plague had broken out. I mean, why on earth would you opt for the loser? Yeah, at that time, it was ridiculous. The Quran was revealed. Between 6 and 9 years, this is mapped on the Arabic of the Quran. 6 and 9 years, the Byzantines would win. And that's exactly what happened. Between 6 and 9 years, the Byzantines did indeed win. So not only did the Prophet make a statement against the dominant power, but he gave a time. This is the worst thing you can do in a prophecy, yeah, especially because I'm not sure if you're aware of cold reading.
Yes, I am.
Yeah, so psychics use this, yeah, cold reading. So
if you give a time which is really specific, and if this is not going to happen, then all of this.
There you go. So that's, I mean, it's good you're aware of that. So that they're told not to do that, because anything, as much leeway as possible. So that actually goes against that principle, yeah, the principle of giving a time. Okay, cool. Then the Prophet, peace be upon him, then claims at a time when Muslims are losing, they're a minority. They're an absolute minority. The Prophet, peace be upon him, says, the Muslims will defeat the Romans and the Persians. Hang on a minute right here. What's going on? This guy's losing. Yeah, this guy's losing. And you have people like Barnaby Rogerson, yeah, and Andrew Laus. These guys are saying, firstly, it's like the Eskimos dreaming of taking over Russia and America, the two biggest superpowers. And they go on to say that even till today, we haven't been able to figure out how on earth that happened. And even Alphonse de Lamartine, he goes on to say that if greatness of purpose, smallness of means, and astounding results were the three measures of human genius, then who can dare to compare themselves to Muhammad, who was a philosopher, who was an orator, who was an apostle, who was a legislator. He was a warrior, he was a conqueror of ideas, and a restorer of rational dogmas. This is a non-Muslim, German philosopher. German or French? No, you know what, he's French. No, Alphonse de Lamartine. I think he's French.
I guess so.
Yeah, Alphonse de Lamartine. Alphonse is Germany?
iPhones. Yeah, actually, it's German and iPhones.
Yes, I think it's German.
I'm not sure. I did not.
Yeah. Either German or French. But hey, look, the thing is, when somebody claims something and he is sane, he's accurate in his prophecies, the holy book he's claiming is preserved, it can be tested empirically, logically, spiritually, it's accurate with his claims, there's a compounding of evidence.
So you say because there's some evidence to some things that he said, all the things he says must be true.
Every single prophecy he's made, because the thing is, look, logically speaking, you've made one prediction.
Yes.
It's like flicking a coin. Could be right, could be wrong. 50-50. But if you're doing something, for example, you guess his father's name, then I'm like, fluke, maybe you've read him or something. His father's name. His father's name.
I don't see where you're going. Yeah.
His father's name.
At some point you're going to call me
At some point I'm going to say, you know what? Let me pay attention to you. Not let me pay attention to you. This is getting interesting now. Then the holy book. Okay, let me ask him this question. No, he's correct. For example, people claim that the Quran was copied by the Bible, but in the Bible, at the time of Joseph, in the Bible it says there were pharaohs, but the Quran says kings. Years later, hundreds of years later, we had the Rosetta Stone that verified that indeed at the time of Joseph there were kings, and the pharaohs came at the time of Moses later on. So if the Prophet merely copied it, I mean, Jarvis, 1400 years later, look at the technology we have. We're debating on artificial intelligence. We're debating on going to Mars. If truly it was an opium, surely the effects of the opium would be long gone by now. 1400, I mean, the effect of drugs wears off after an hour, 2 hour, half a day. It's really good. Maybe you go off and maybe there's a bit of remnants. But 1400 years and the argument still can survive the test of time. The prophecies are there. The contradictions of the Quran are non-existent, because if they were, you saw there were certain people that were here, they were hovering about, now making claims, no contradictions. They'd be coming over the head, bang, bang. There's this contradiction, there's no contradiction that these people are confident with.
Okay.
If so, the claim, because it's a falsification test, if that was the case, it would have been proven to be false. These claims would have been pathetic. Or the Quran is saying this or that. You're saying the test of time. I would say that the verses of science in the Quran, they can be interpreted according to the people that were 1400 years ago, and can be interpreted, for example, the heliocentric model and the geocentric model. Both are compatible with the Quran. It doesn't give a definitive, because it's not a book of science, but somebody who's versed with science, it's still compatible with them. Now, I don't know about you, Jarvis, but this is when things start getting a bit serious now. Because if something is by some random guy, how is he able to think about things and people that are going to come 1400 years into the future, and this book is going to be valid for them and their problems, and valid for their problems? In fact, Jarvis, Islam came to preserve 5 things: religion, life, intellect, family, and wealth. And if you look at these things, these are the very things that we are struggling with today. Looking at wealth, Islam forbids interest, because with interest the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. It's haram, it's forbidden for us to engage with interest.
Or you're not communists, right?
Sorry?
You're not communists.
Communism, capitalism, Islam has its own system which transcends that. Objective economics, from God. So interest is a major problem. When you look at family, the breakdown of family, that's why adultery, we have problems with adultery. Like if you're in a marriage, commitment in marriage, respect of family values, Because today the issues that you will see statistically, the kids that come from broken homes, they're more likely to be obese, they're more likely to become a bane for society, more likely to, abuse drugs and this and that. That's statistically that we see. The couples that are in committed relationships, they're less likely to break the law. So look, Islam came to preserve these points by preserving us. If it was man-made, Jarvis, things would be very materialistic. Oh no, you have to give this to the Prophet, or you have to build this and do this and do that. It would be feeding the elite. But even our charity, 2.5% of our annual savings go to the poor people. And if you and I, when we have to give our obligatory charity, if we give it to some Larry and some, Bilal, whatever, without researching, the onus is on us. We need to make sure we do the research. We need to make sure that we do the research that the poor people receive it. Even when Eid, our day of celebration, comes, we sacrifice animals, but then that meat we give to the poor people, the people that don't get that protein, they don't get that sustenance, they don't get to have the luxury of eating, whatever. So again, our religion, if it was human-centric, it would be feeding the desires. The Prophet Muhammad would be saying, yes, I'm allowed to do this and I'm allowed to do that and do this or that. But the Prophet, peace be upon him, would stand in prayer at night till his feet became swollen. Like now you've been standing for a while, you see that, okay, there's a bit of, sometimes you might need to kind of do this. Oops, too strong. So, so it would be very human-centric. So the point that I'm trying to say is analyzing the character of the Prophet, analyzing the prophecies of the Prophet, analyzing the veracity of because 1400 years, people have been after Islam's blood. There have been people, Nietzsche.
Yes.
When it came to Christians comparing themselves with Muslims in the book Antichrist, he was very categorical. He said, you guys shouldn't be comparing yourself with the Muslims. He was very in favor, and he felt that these people have something that you guys don't. So when we look at these, even people that whether they accepted Islam, whether they didn't, but that respect for Islam is there, even from somebody who used the words God is dead. This individual is saying, look, you guys are a problem. Like, why? How dare you compare yourself to them? Yeah. So the thing is, Jarvis, what I'm trying to say is that if somebody claims to be a prophet, you have every right to say, yeah, what about this, what about that? You say that book, I'm going to go home, I'm going to study that book. Jarvis, now, after we've done with our discussion, I'm going to give you a Quran. I'm not going to say, take my number, take You're free to go home, read however you want, whenever you want. And I will give you another thing as well to bear in mind. I'll say, look, when you go home, when you're by yourself, the door's locked, don't call me, don't message. I'm not saying tell me anything. Maybe we don't see each other for the rest of our lives. Just go home, just raise your hands and say, God, I don't know you. I've been introduced to you today through a very handsome man who's making some good arguments. Look, I don't know. I'm alive, I'm seeing all these problems and the hardships happening. I don't know, it makes sense, but look, please just guide me. I'm not saying pay me this or have subscription to this. I'm so confident in this process. I can say you can speak to him directly without any intermediary. You can raise your hands and you have connection with him. And that's who God is. If we believe he's necessary being, he has will, he has power, intelligence, he wants to give us a holy book and this and that, then surely you as Jarvis should have connection with him. And you do. And that's, you can test it. This is testable. You can go home. You don't have to tell anybody anything. At the end of our discussion, you go home, you're sitting on the bus, you can just say it to yourself. It doesn't have to be loud. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to light candles and then, none of that. Yeah, you just sit. Normally, you just raise your hand. However you feel comfortable, wherever you are, I promise you, Jarvis, with every kind of being or every, atom that I have, I'm telling you, I promise you, You will speak, he will listen. I just ask you for one thing, just like you have been here, just be sincere, which I'm sure you are already. And then you will I'm not saying anything afterwards.
Yeah.
So that's my thing. Now, if somebody claims to be a prophet and they're deceptive, firstly, they want money from you, or they want to be famous. The prophet, in fact, when he claimed to be a prophet, he was persecuted. Financially, he didn't do well. His family, like his wife, passed away. When it comes to money, somebody came to him and said, "We will give you women." He said, "No." "I'll give you money." "No." We'll exercise you if there's a spirit within you." "No." You know why that's a problem? If you were to come to me and offer me money on camera in front of everybody, and I say no, there's a problem now, because I can't come to you again.
Yes.
I'm closing the door. So if I come to you again, you're going to say, last time you said no. What's changed? You want money? This is a man who wants money. That's a problem now. So he closed the door earlier on. I don't want money, I don't want women, I don't want this. The teachings of Islam are for our benefit. Give charity, look after your parents. Today we see a increase in old people's homes. This is ridiculous in Islam. You respect your parents. Human rights, Islam says not human rights. Rights is about what you're owed. Responsibility. Responsibilities are important as well. Which human right deals with the parents and the neighbors? The Prophet would speak about the neighbors so much that the companions would say, "We were worried that the neighbors would end up in our will." We'd have to leave money, inheritance behind for them. So here is a man. Here is somebody that even non-Muslims are saying, this guy, no, even though we don't accept him, wow, what a man. Michael H. Hart put him in the 100, number one in his 100 most, influential and remarkable people of history. This is a non-Muslim. He didn't accept Islam. He was a Christian. Put Jesus, I think, number 4 or something. So, like I said, all these names, they're there. So, what would you say after hearing this? And Jarvis, the reason why this is so important,
yes,
I'm going to be honest, is because of a lack of morality, a lack of objective morality.
There's no objective morality.
So, when somebody believes in a God, a necessary being with the characteristics that we described, naturally we get our morality from him. Because we're dependent upon him, isn't it?
You use, I think that's religion.
Yeah.
That's my favorite part about religion, that they use it as like a moral compass.
Yes.
Use it to initiate ideas of morality so people stick up to that. But then tell me how different religions tell so different moralities then. And do you ever feel unsure of your religion ever?
So the thing is, look, firstly, there's an inference to the best explanation.
Yes.
Yeah. When you're looking at preservation, when you're looking at numerical precision, when you're looking at prophecies that have been mentioned, when you're looking at and the veracity of them and the accuracy of them, when you're looking at the claims that the Holy Book is making, when you're seeing the practical information, when you're seeing the non-materialistic nature of it, and then when you look at other religions and you don't see that, the inference to the best explanation tells you this. For example, if I see 3 people here, someone's robbed my house, but I painted my house blue and the paint hadn't dried. Yeah? So that person, if 3 people are standing in front of me and the police are saying it's one of these 3 people, so I'm going to look at the evidence. Yeah?
We're going to look at the paint.
Yeah, I'm going to look at the blue paint, like does anybody have any blue paint? I'm going to look at the footprints, like Sherlock Holmes. He starts looking at this size 10 boot, and we look at the soles of the shoes of that individual. We look at his weight and we see the print that was made and the likes. So because of the compound of evidence and the effectiveness and the veracity of Islam, I haven't come across a single worthy adversary to Islam. The only other adversary that claims to come close to Islam is Christianity.
But how come Christianity is bigger than the Islam?
Christianity is bigger than Islam Because technically speaking, there's two things here. Number one, Jesus came before the Prophet Muhammad. Yeah, so Christians have been around longer. That's the first thing. Secondly, Islam, they're saying in about 20, 30 years is going to surpass Christianity anyway. Yeah, that's in pure research says this, about 20, 30 years.
Because of population or because of belief?
Because of belief, because you can't be a Muslim without belief.
So religion is something trending.
So trending. You can say it's trending. So that was the first thing you said. Secondly, as Muslims, we don't believe Islam started at the time of the Prophet Muhammad. We believe Islam started from the beginning.
Yeah, you think it's before Muhammad revealed the idea of?
Yeah.
But how come there are other religions before the Islam?
Yes. So God, the idea of God, we believe, look, so the thing is, look, we're not saying, and this is again what makes Islam compatible and logical, because Islam is not negating the wisdom and the influence of hundreds and thousands of years of philosophy and wisdom. That's ridiculous. How did God only send a prophet 1400 years ago? That's preposterous. According to Islam, according to narration, approximately 124,000 prophets have come. 124,000 prophets. Some people are, we have no issues. Hindus believe that there was rishis and people. We have no issues. It's not contradictory. That people have come, they were prophets and they gave guidance. Graham Hancock, who looks historically into civilizations, that they would come and they had architecture and this and that. People would come and they would tell them about, the apocalypse, or the asteroids would come, the meteors and this and that. There will always be people of wisdom that would come, that would impart wisdom upon the people. So we believe that prophets came, they called towards one God, to monotheism, one God, to believe in that prophet, and they gave them a way of life that was beneficial for them, constructive, not destructive. But the thing, Jarvis, was that just as human beings, we love to add our 2 cents in, like Nietzsche, genius. But a lot of people don't know, later on in his life, he had an illness.
I know that,
yeah. Of course you would know that, but unfortunately a lot of people, they will say, oh, but he's very disjointed, he's writing like this, and why is it so haphazard? But he only had 20 minutes bursts of writing. These doctors would tell him, you can't write too much, it's going to affect you, it's going to be too much. So he would have 20 minutes worth of bursts that he would put later on in his life. So that's the thing, we had with Nietzsche. What was the point that I was making before Nietzsche?
I think you were talking about how the Islam was there from the beginning.
Yeah. So so naturally, the point that I'm trying to say is people love claiming, like Nietzsche was claimed by the Nazis, and
that's not true. That was because of his sister. Because Nietzsche was so ill, his sister took his work and gave it to the Nazis.
Exactly.
That's all the Nazis took it from the Übermensch. You know the Übermensch?
Yes. But the sister kind of prostituted him. Oh yeah, and she was very close to them, and then they took his ideas or whatnot. But they claimed him, isn't it?
They claimed him?
They claimed Nietzsche, like they claimed that they were, we like his philosophy and we believe in his philosophy. So that's the thing. As human beings, we like the Bible as well. There's certain codexes where people have added bits in. And there's if you look at the codex of the Vaticana, there's actually a copyist that's saying, can you stop copying can you stop adding this bit in? Or they would actually put messages in there because they were so frustrated that people would be adding things in. So when it came to previous nations, yes, the prophets came, people benefited from the prophets, but as human beings, every soul must taste death. When the prophets were passed away, their holy books later on were changed. Things were added in, things were taken out. Then God would send another guide. Yeah, and this has gone on.
Oh, you think so? That Muhammad was the guy who was sent because of the adding into the Bible?
Yeah, so there have been 124,000 prophets. The last prophet, we believe Muhammad, peace be upon him, is the last prophet. Yeah, and the revelation that he was given was the book. Because there was no prophet after him, then we believe that the Quran has to be special from the other books. There have to be ways that it's preserved Because if the issue with the previous books were that they got changed and stuff like that, then you as Muslims, you need to prove that your book is veracious. And we can, like I gave earlier on, the examples that the Quran is indeed veracious. And oh yeah, but how till the end of time and this and that? Yes, we have prophecies that we're seeing come to life even till today about what the Prophet predicted 1400 years ago. So stuff like this, when it comes to the veracity of Islam, we don't negate that there have been people of wisdom before. But all we claim is that things have been manipulated, things have been changed, things have been miscopied, but that cannot happen with the Quran. It's the end of the chain. The Quran and the teachings that are in the Quran is beneficial for you and I till today. Like Jesus said, I have been sent to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. He made that clear. Yeah, I've been sent to you. And then he would speak, say certain words, I don't want to repeat on camera, about people that were disbelievers. Yeah, but when it came to the Prophet, peace be upon him, he is the Prophet for everyone, for all. So he needs to be accessible by all as well, by the language being accessible, by the teachings being accessible, by a rational person. Like if a 6-year-old was here and I had to explain the doctrine of Christianity, Trinity, it would be confusing. Now you got Jesus, the Son, the Father, Holy Spirit. They're three, but they are one. So God, Jesus is God. Yes, Jesus is God. But when he was on the cross and he died, who died? God died? No, he was the Son. It's the Son. So you can't explain and rationalize it to a 6-year-old, to a 7-year-old, to somebody who's not well versed. So religion, if it's for all, it has to be something accessible to all. So the Quran, so the Islam, you can explain to a child. We believe there's none worthy of worship besides Allah. Muhammad, peace be upon him, is his messenger. That's the crux of Islam. Yeah, to believe in Allah, the angels, the books, yeah, the prophets, that amantu billahi wa malaikatihi, the angels, wa kutubihi wa rusulihi, the books, the prophets, wal yawm al akhir, the day of judgment, wal yawm al akhir, wal qadri khairihi, that good and bad is from God, qadri khairihi min Allah ta'ala, wal ba'thi ba'd al maut, and that there is life after death. Yeah. And when it comes to veracity, I don't know about you, but wisdom and philosophy is all well and good. But sometimes when I see nice quotes, it takes me ages. I have to search it up. Did Malcolm X really say this? Did Immanuel Kant really say this? Did Jeremy Bentham say this? Schopenhauer, did he say this? So I then have to find, because a lot of people make stuff up. Yeah, Schopenhauer. Yeah, he was one of the influences of Nietzsche as well, isn't he?
I'm not sure which way around, but one of the influences, but he was the one of the pessimism.
Yeah, he was. So the thing is, and this is another beauty in Islam as well, we have something called the chain of narration. I'm standing here now, 1400 years down the line. I can tell you what the Prophet said, the Arabic. I can translate it into English. I can tell you who I got it from, who they got it from, who they got it from. And I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cameras. Confidently. Do you think I can?
I do believe you. I don't want to test you right now because I want to keep the conversation, not just like you showing off here.
Okay, no worries.
Could you remind me, please, of the beginning? What do you believe in the beginning was? So there was nothing, right? And then God, Allah, in your case, created life.
So just in the beginning, we believe the necessary being. So logically, the necessary being can't have a beginning. Yeah.
But so technically, this necessary being is a placeholder. You can insert everything in it. You can put your Allah in. You can put any other God into it, right?
Right.
So this is not really evidence. It's more like a thought. A thought to explain something that you cannot really understand.
Right.
So now let's go back. I just want to know your mythology of it.
Yes.
There's nothing, and then Allah creates the world.
Right.
Now there is. I'm not that familiar with Islam, unfortunately. I was from Germany. Christianity is more a thing there.
Yes.
Are there the first people there? Or what is the first thing that is created?
Yeah, so just like with the major Abrahamic religions, we believe in a very similar origin story.
Like
not the same.
So there's Adam and Eve.
Yeah, you have Adam and Eve, and then civilization. Adam and Eve, yeah.
What are you calling in Islam?
Adam for Adam, and Hawa for Eve.
Okay. Those are the first creatures.
They're the first. They're the first humans.
The first. And what was the first thing to be created? The first creature.
The first creature, Islam doesn't tell us.
Because I want to know what is the thing about dinosaurs.
Okay, so that's very interesting.
I once heard that someone said that the bones, like the bones of the dinosaurs you can find everywhere in the world, was placed from God to test your belief into Islam. Is that true, or is this like?
No.
Okay, so that was wrong.
No, look. The thing is that the Quran tells us, and Islam teaches us why. Why are we here? What are we doing here? This, that. The whyness, science teaches us how. In fact, when Europe was in the Dark Ages, Islam was in the Golden Ages. So again, like I said, everything that I can say you can search up later, yeah? So when Europe was going through the Dark Ages, Islam was going through the Golden Ages. We had philosophers, we had, scientists.
Which time was that around?
The Dark Ages.
Was that when the Kreuzzüge happened? The Kreuzzüge? It was when the Christians slaughtered a lot of Muslims and Jews.
Yeah. I don't know, but it was at the time when the Muslims had taken over Spain, Al-Andalus. Yeah, so Spain was under Muslim rule for about 800 years. So Muslims, we're credited with a lot of things, like the first solar flyer, the process of sublimation, crystallization, amalgamation. We have Jabir ibn Hayyan, the scientific method. Even according to the BBC, there was an article that credits it to someone called Jabir ibn Hayyan. Yeah, the oldest map to Al-Idrisi, citric fruits being brought into Europe by, of course, the Muslims and the like. So the Muslims are credited with a lot of scientific discoveries, even astronomy. A lot of craters on the moons are named after Muslim scientists or scientists that were in Muslim, the Muslim civilization at that time, be it Muslim or non-Muslim. So science and Islam has never been at odds, and Islam never claims to teach us science. In fact, we're encouraged that once we know our purpose, once we have perfected our relationship with God, then we can perfect our relationship with everything else. And that's the thing that I think you mentioned at the beginning as well, about control. That Islam, the only thing Islam tells you and I to control is our desires. It doesn't tell us to control each other. It tells us to, like, I may have the desire to force this or harm you or do this. Islam says, no, you can't do that. Yeah, Islam says, okay, you see a woman and you want to kind of, have your way with her. Islam says, no, how dare you? Yeah, if you are to be with that woman, you are to marry her. When you marry her, you will give her mahar. Yeah, you will give her a gift to show that you appreciate her. There needs to be two witnesses, and verses of the Quran will be read, so she feels valued. And so if something happens, people know that that relationship took place. There is safety. So Islam teaches us to control our desires. So that's one of the things that you said at the beginning, that sometimes religion can be seen as a form of control. But with Islam, it's the exact opposite.
Do you fear God?
But fear God, what do you like? Even fear in Arabic, there's three types of fear. There's the fear of God that we do, and this is very fantastic that you've said this. The child with the mother. The mother chastises the child cries, but then runs towards the mother. So there is a fear that I've done something wrong, but that fear in Arabic is the fear that is drawing you closer. So I fear God in the sense that fear is driving me to God, not away from God. I don't fear him like, oh, he will smite me, he will do this and he will do that. No, this is more like, I've let you down, like I'm letting myself down. Because sometimes, Jarvis, I do something wrong, God won't punish me and smite me. I will see the things like, damn, like I've disrespected my mother. see the tears in her eyes, like, God, please forgive me. Like, it's ridiculous. Makes me feel bad. And then I need to go and ask her for forgiveness. So I'm so glad you're asking these questions, because you're right. Religion, like when it came to Galileo, and when he saw certain things, that the church prosecuted him. I don't want to, lay claims to Christians. I mean, this is the general narrative that Galileo was in problems when he said things against the church. So with Islam, it was the exact opposite. We had, Ibn al-Haytham, and we had Jabir ibn Hayyan, and we had al-Batani, and all of these guys that were coming and doing these and didn't go against the Quran. So the Quran doesn't say that God doesn't put in the Quran, if you get a headache, have a paracetamol. If someone 1400 years goes, what the hell is a paracetamol? You know what I mean? Like dinosaurs. Like, look, we have the capability. We have paleontology. There's paleontologists. There's a scientific method. There's carbon dating. This is something that we can learn. The empiricism, the inductive method. There's no issue with that. Do science. Go forth. Do science. Learn about the creation. In fact, biology, chemistry, physics, people that have learned this. In the past, when Newton formalized the theory of gravity, he didn't say, aha, I found gravity, therefore there's no God. Because then Stephen Hawking, he credits what we see around us to gravity, force. But you and I know a force is descriptive. Yeah, it describes. It's not creative. Like forces don't produce action. They describe action. You agree with that, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah. So stuff like that, Jarvis, is where I'm so glad we're having this conversation, because this is the distinction, and this is the reason why Islam now, you can check the Pew polls, it's the fastest growing religion. Yeah, especially amongst women. Here in the West, especially amongst women.
Really?
Yeah, amongst women, because Islam tells us that, look, don't objectify them, can't use them. Like, I'm a married man, I'm telling you, it's very difficult. Yeah, giving rights to the wife, like, I have to look after her, I have to care for her, I have to make sure, she has hobbies and she's this, the mother of my children, be there for her financially, provide and this and that, and to be a man for her. Yeah, and stuff like this, that there's people, if I was to say that to a random person on the street, say, man, what's a man? What's a woman? We don't know. This is the thing with subjective morality, coming back to that. When we're left to our devices, the political pressures, the economic pressures, greed, desire takes over. And to rely on morality to a human being who has their own motives is very risky. That's why we say, look, there is objective morality which can be tested, which can be appreciated. This is what we see in Islam. And this is why I'm speaking with such passion, and I'm confident we can never meet again. And I'm confident that if you pursue the case that and the points that I have mentioned, there's nothing other than Islam that ticks the boxes, whether it's philosophically, teleologically, morally, metaphysically, even rationally. Like, it's there, it meets the criteria, and it's successful even to today as well.
Do you think your colleagues fear God?
I would say they fear God in the way I described it. Okay. Some people...
I do think there are people who, not just like you as authority, but just simply fear God. Do you think fear can be used to control people?
Yes.
So why cannot religion be used to control society?
Brilliant. I'll let God answer this. So God says, you're going to be enslaved regardless. There's going to be control regardless. Now here's the distinction he makes. Either you're enslaved to one, or you're going to be enslaved to many. Now the distinction here is very important. If a person is enslaved to God, God doesn't ask for money. He doesn't ask for, our dignity or stuff like that. We're allowed to be dignified. We're allowed to be scientists. We're allowed to be mothers and fathers. But when it comes to, for example, if you say there's no God, and you say, okay, I don't want to be controlled by anyone. That's false, actually. You're going to be controlled, and you're going to attribute God and that void of God. Sorry, excuse me. That void of God in other things. For example, celebrities. People will worship celebrities. Sports, like football, you've got the Colosseum, and you've got people wearing same clothes and chanting and, crying and happy and sad and this and that. So either you'll be pulled by these forces. Now, when you go to a football match, you have to pay for the jersey, you have to pay for this, you have to pay for that, and you have to follow your team if they're in World Cup or this or that. When you're at work, okay, I need to be at that time, and I have to give my everything to work and this and that. That's become my purpose. So people are obsessed. Come COVID time, because job was taken from them, they couldn't go there, they couldn't leave the house, they were going crazy. So the thing now is, your boss is now going to use that control to manipulate you, to get more work out of you, because his role and his job is to make the most money. His company needs to survive. The job of a corporation is to survive. The job of a country is to survive. People that are nationalists, like Theresa May said here, yes, it's within our national interests. We will do things that are in our national interests. So God acknowledges this and doesn't deny it. That no, it's fine, because we can never truly be free. We'll always be subject to something, because that's how human beings, we're lacking. God says this in the Quran as well. He has created us. We're weak. Yeah, I hear that. Oh, that's nice. Oh, he looks good. Oh, that bike looks nice. Oh, that's a nice dance. Look at that. Yeah. So you do. So there's all sorts of things happening. Yeah. So God says that, look, I have your best interests in mind. So I'm going to tell you, look, you need to look after each other. Look after the people that are weaker than you. Yeah, the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, don't kill the women and the children. Yeah, the women and the children. I can tell you that I've got that from the book of Imam Malik. Imam Malik said this. He heard it from Nafi. Nafi heard it from Abdullah bin Umar. Abdullah bin Umar heard it from Muhammad, peace be upon him. Just stuff like this. This is the sort of stuff that we need. And for a religion that claims to be the last, with the last prophet, I'm sorry, but the prophecies, the claims, the veracity have to weigh up. And for me, chain of narration is something unique to Islam. Sorry? Excellent. Okay, wicked. So when it comes to how our quotes have been canonized, the Quran has been preserved, the prophecies can be checked by non-Muslims and Muslims, debates have happened in time immemorial. A guy who's unlettered, who's come to the desert, and despite there being such technology and stuff, I mean, with all due respect to the Arabs, they're not the most influential today. Yeah, it's the West that's the most influential. The Arabs are, in science and technology, they're not fantastic. They rely on Western technologies. But when it comes to religion, subhanallah, like, how is a man that's come to the desert, who's made that claim, and we're still discussing him 1400 years ago, and what he said is on the rise? A rational mind, Jarvis, because the thing is, look, I can tell you certain things, like you see a painting, it's painted really well. You would never say that, after billions of years it's come and the colors merge together or something like that. See a mobile phone. So look, I understand that philosophically that the flaws in these the things that are posited, but I'm just speaking man to man. I'm saying, look, let's be just. When we just, for all the discussion that we said, I've given you the answers and stuff like that, put everything to the side. We're walking down the street. There is certain consistency within creation. You're not just going to start flying. The bus isn't randomly going to start, turn into a pancake. There is some consistency in creation. There's a beauty. You see a bird, it's flying. Okay, I guess my question to you is, when you look at the migratory instinct of a bewick swan, the homing instinct of a pigeon, the echolocator system in that of a bat, the blood pressure control system in the brain of a giraffe. I mean, how many times would a person say, no, that just happened, or that's just this, or that's that? Surely there must be a being that goes beyond that. And the thing is, look, we're not calling you towards, look, it's a cult and you're going to have to do this and you're going to, look, you pray, you can pray at home, you read the Quran at home, you continue living your life, but it just gives you a moral anchorage. Like, I wouldn't ever want to see you in a state that you're depressed and you're like, what's the point of it all? Because atheism leads eventually, I mean, obviously liberalism with a small L, because you believe in the harm principle and all that, or the Kantian categorical imperative, whatever it may be.
Yeah, from the Kant, I think that's the best moral principle there is.
Yeah, and then eventually a person thinks, you know what, nihilism. Like, how can I say that a surgeon who's working morning to evening is better than a person who's making circles? It leads to absurdities. And a person, the zest of life gets taken from you. So I would say liberalism is the actual control. When Jeremy Bentham said the two sovereign powers are pleasure and pain, and from him John Stuart Mill then came, perfected or added the utilitarian. Yeah. So the thing here is, the Quran says this: slave to your desires. Don't be a slave to your desires. And the thing is that if it was man-made, we'd be told to be a slave to the desires, because look at the corporations today. What do the corporations say? Oh, buy this can of Coke. Family time, love. Oh, you have this. This will make you feel strong. I don't know if you remember these perfume adverts. You put them on, the links especially, with the links advert, and then all the women start gravitating like animals. Or the peau de femme. He puts it out. He's running on the beach. He sees her. She sees him. They like each other. They do the. So they have these very fancy adverts targeting our carnal desires. Look at her, she's so beautiful. Yeah, look at her face, look at her features, symmetry. Okay, look, you want family. Your father wasn't around. Why? Because he likes another woman, so he left your mother, and this happened and that happened. They know the statistics that broken families, the father's not around, people want desires, they're attracted by females. This is exactly what corporations and companies are targeting us. There's a philosopher, I think he's German as well, Theodor Adorno. Theodor Adorno, he makes the point that consumerism and movies, music, television, magazines, all these things are trying to distract us from, firstly, making political change, and secondly, from knowing who we are. Like, what's our purpose? What's the job? Like, what are we doing here? So I would argue that we need Islam. We need Islam and the principles of Islam, because everything else is drawing us towards desires, is drawing us to just sleep with women. Sorry, they're human beings. Or to women, just sleep with men. But when you sleep with somebody, that's a union. There's a closeness. The Quran describes a man and a woman as a garment, because a garment is the closest thing to your skin. That's the closest thing to you. So the Quran describes as garments because there's a sense of intimacy where two people are coming close together, as if spiritually you're one, your souls are, you're like one being. So there's a certain spirituality, there's a certain depth behind these things that even science fails to explain.
Like science behind that.
Like consciousness.
It's interpretation. It's a belief. It's the idea of that sex is sacred, and that you should not do that with any person without the holy bond of marriage, right?
Yeah. So the point there would be then, if we use the harm principle then to prove the morality of it, then we say, okay, let's analyze the harms and let's analyze it, pain versus pleasure, and then you can kind of arrive to it. Of course, our morality is not based on the utilitarian model; it's objective morality.
What is your morality then?
So our morality is the objective morality, the morality that's given to us by God, somebody that again is not here, somebody that doesn't want to get something from us. Whilst morality of human beings will always be a morality of getting, of receiving. That's why even if I was to ask you about happiness, how do you define happiness?
I'm not sure. I guess you could define happiness as Bentham did, as more pleasure than pain when you're happy.
But then I think you know what I'm going to respond to
The
that.
problem with happiness is that it's just like short term. Happiness comes and happiness goes away.
So that's because happiness is being interpreted again by these corporations as well. Lust as desires. Yeah, just having fun, just having sex with a woman that makes you happy. No, it gives you pleasure. Does it make you happy though? How do you define happiness? Like,
what does make you happy?
So joy is about having. Joy is about receiving. Contentment is about having. Happiness is supposed to be, well, according to the Quran, is uninterrupted giving. Uninterrupted giving of something good. Yeah, there's not supposed to be an interruption. That's why happiness will be in paradise. Happiness can be here, but it's difficult because again we go up and down. So happiness like this, because that's why even in the American Constitution this is the pursuit of happiness, and that's it, because it's as if you're never going to be able to really attain it. It's like the carrot and the donkey, so they know you're never really going to achieve it. So again, happiness is uninterrupted giving of something good. When it comes to everything else, it's always I need to have this, I need to have that, and that's why it's capitalized. The iPhone, they know you're going to get the next one, because the other one, you like that feeling when you had it and somebody looked at you and said, oh wow, is that the new iPhone? Oh, very nice jacket, very nice. Where did you get this from?
Why did you buy this watch on your wrist?
I didn't. This was a gift.
Oh, okay. And why did they give that to you?
They gave it to me because it's nice. It looks nice, and in Islam we're told tahadu tahabu, exchange gifts with one another and you will love one another. The brother who actually gave me this, he said, look, you record videos for me and you don't ask anything in return. Yeah, because he records things on Islam. Yeah, because he's studied philosophy and he's very academic, and he's not good with the camera. So I said, look, I'll help you out, and he'll help me learn from you as well. So he said, look, you don't ask for anything, you don't ask for money, so I want to give you a gift. Yeah, so this is my gift to you. The Prophet peace be upon him said, tahadu tahabu, exchange gifts with one another and you will love one another. So then again, that exchange, that gives love amongst us. Whilst when you look at utilitarianism and stuff like that, it's all about the self. The morality of Islam transcends that. And we don't do stuff for the sake of feelings, because feelings come and go. We do stuff for the sake of God. And
so you do stuff because it was written that it's correct.
We do stuff because it's morally the right thing to do, not because it feels good to us.
But you think it's the right thing to do because it was written by God?
Because yes.
That's not objective morality, that's called heteronormative Gebotsethik. It's called something is right because it was written.
Right.
And that's what all the people do here who are religious.
Yes.
The Christian people do that, the Hindu people do that,
of course.
So how can your be the objective morality if everybody does that in a different way?
No, they also believe they have an objective morality.
Exactly, everybody believes that. So how can your morality be the objective one?
Yes. So the way you determine which objective morality is the one from God is first you have to look at the arguments that they give from God. Like so you claim your objective morality. What's your book? Who's your prophet? What claims has he made? How can I check it? And what claims are being made empirically, metaphysically, and the likes. That's why we started off the conversation with this, because it then follows that once you see that, look, Islam, fulfills that criteria, then okay, let's now look at the morality. Let's see how Islam can, assist us and help us and guide us. That's what it comes down. It's not about, okay, let's compare moralities, because what we're doing is we're tugging at the leaves. At the start of the conversation, we went straight to the roots. We said, where's your claims coming from? Somebody can say his name's James. James says, I have morality that you should be, kind to the whales. Okay, that's nice.
That's not morality.
But his morality would be, animals are more superior than human beings, therefore we need to look after animals. So that's his morality.
That's his maxim.
Yeah, that's his maxim. Yeah. So that's the claim that he's making. If he now claims that, look, it's coming from a higher being and this and that, okay, now it's becoming more deeper. Now I need to analyze your claims, like we've been doing. You see, so I would say that the morality of anyone who believes in God, frankly, anyone who believes in God, it's a stronger moral anchorage than somebody who just relies on the self, because the self, like Noam Chomsky said, manufacturing consent. Consent can be manufactured, and even our dispositions, and so you can use nudge theory, and you can use manipulations that certain politicians are using, the propaganda. It's actually very risky. If you're at the mercy of the people, and the people are led by their desires, they're led with, survival, then I mean, we used to say that your survival is in their favor. You know what I'm saying? It's like utilitarianism. Like the poor guy that's in the middle of the Colosseum getting chased by a lion, that's his, the benefit of the people, because they have collectively more pleasure than him. It makes sense utilitarianism.
That's one of the weaknesses of utilitarianism.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why, like, regardless of whether you're a minority or a majority, yeah, like in like when Muslims ruled in certain places like Palestine and Andalus, you had Christians and Jews that lived very amicably. Yeah, Maimonides, you can search these names up. They were Christians and Jews that reached very high ranks. There weren't any issues with Muslims and Jews and Christians living together harmoniously. It was only when politics started coming in. And Karen Armstrong makes this strong point as well, that a lot of these people that make these claims, religious claims, are actually political in nature. This politics that's actually, pardon my French, a bastardized kind of the true picture. And so that's why I would say, and that's why I'm making the claim that I think, no, not even I think, I make the postulation confidently, Islam will make your life better. Islam has the answers, and Islam will meet any criticism and criteria as long as it comes, criticism and any questions, robustly, because of, I would say, truth from God.
I think you should be very careful with Islam has the answers. I think it should be referred to Islam has an answer, just like every other religion. For me, religion is something that, I don't think religion is bad. I think it just makes sense, because we're very intelligent species, we're humans, we have like rationality. Then we can ask questions like, why do we exist? What happens after our death? But we are not able to like answer these questions. And that's the thing. I think at this point where you ask this question, this is where religion comes in, because religion is the thing you can answer with everything. And I do think that makes sense to do that, because it helps you with a lot of problems yourself. But I don't think it's the answer. It's a possible answer. And therefore I think it's like very absolute and maybe a bit short-minded to think that your religion is like the only one, and that everybody else here who does exactly the same thing as you do. They talk to people, they talk about objectionality, they talk about how their religion is the most immaculate, the most specific, the most timeless, and the best one, simply. All of these people are the same. And I just think that's not the way you should do it. I think you should accept religion as something that could possibly be human-made, which follows up to better human life within society. As you know, neither you nor I can prove God, and neither can you. You cannot prove God.
I think
you can try to do some evidence, but Thomas von Aquinas himself says that to prove God is something you should not do, because it's hilarious. Those evidences are not really evidence. They just like leave a lot of room for critics.
The thing with Aquinas is he's made some good points, he's made some bad points, he's got some strengths, he's got some weaknesses.
Like everyone.
Like everyone. But the point is that the people in the park, I've made these claims, and I'm going to stick by these claims categorically. And you're more than welcome. As you explore the park, you will hear the claims made by the other people. The claims will not be of a empirically, rationally, timeless nature. You will see the flaws in the arguments. You will see yourself. And the claims that I'm saying, because I come to the park as well, debated and spoken to many people. That's why I can confidently make this claim. And that's why when we make the argument from dependency, veracious, logical, and when we then give it characteristics, and then when we posit that, okay, there has to be a holy book, then the holy book with the compounding of evidence, I'm sorry, but the level of certainty increases. I agree with you that in terms of, let's just say, just for us to be accurate in our speech, we can use the word inference to the best explanation. So I would say that Islam has the best inference to the best explanation because of the systems that are in place, all the ones that I mentioned, like preservation with the three-pronged approach, from the ancient religions like Hinduism, Judaism, Christianity, they will never make those claims. They will never make the claims of a chain of narration where not only can you quote somebody who's in that chain, but you have entire biographies about those people. A non-Muslim can come and critique it. You have prophecies that are specific, that can be backed up by non-Muslim sources. I appreciate that maybe you've heard these for the first time. Maybe when you've had a chance to kind of reflect over them, and you hear those arguments as well, and you say, look, this is what I heard from Muslim. What about you guys? So it'll be interesting, and I would argue, and that's why I can make that categorical statement, that when there is a build-up of the evidence, it becomes illogical to suggest, you know what, all of that evidence, that scaffolding of evidence is a maybe, is this, is that, just like the example that we gave just of testimony. Or if a person says that, look, I know your father's name, I know your father's name, there comes a time where it's actually ridiculous now to say, we still don't know, he's now equal to, the other 100 people that I hear. I say, no, you can't put that in the same place. And because of the reasons that we discussed earlier on, the voracious nature, the other religions actually can't, because they'll be polytheists. There'll be holes in their narrative. The book is not preserved. It's very abstract. But I'm being told to follow a book, but it's very abstract. But then again, okay, there's a person he's God. How can a person be a God? So there's ways that you can intellectually break it down. But over here, as I'm sure you saw as well, I've been kind of like very open, like, okay, so you think this, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? With those, they're just going to say, look, you have to, look, this is part of this belief or that belief or this and that. And the point of morality that I said follows on. For once we've accepted that there is a necessary being, then when we give it the characteristics that are in line with the Quran and the definition of God, then when we look at scripture, we look at prophecies, we look at the systems that have been put in place, then we say, you know what, Islam's case is the strongest. That's the conclusion that a person reaches.
That's your conclusion, that Islam.
Yes, of course. And I would argue also, upon your research as well, we'll give you the Quran as well, and you can, read that when you get a chance. It's in English, it's a translation. Yeah. So, you can check it out yourself. You're more than welcome to read the other scriptures as well. No issue with that. Read it, speak to their people, watch the discussions and this and that. And I promise you, hand on my heart, because who knows, we might not get to meet again, you'll see the veracity of what's discussed, because I've done philosophy as well. I have many experiences of hearing rebuttals and arguments and this and that. I gave you the arguments that I saw somebody like yourself with a philosophical background would appreciate. I'm conscious that we're cold and we've been standing here for a long time. Upon reflection, you will see, and this notion that just because there's loads of something and they're all claiming something, therefore we can't claim that. One very simple analogy is I give, even when we're going to buy shampoo. It's like 30 different types of shampoos. I never see anybody in Superdrug or these shops paralyzed with choice, saying, oh my God, there's so many, what do I do? Immediately what people start doing is they pick it up, they look at the back, they start looking at what does this have. Like, I want something that doesn't have SLS and colors in it and stuff like that, that's going to be bad for my skin. Somebody might say, I have a lot of dandruff, so I need something that's anti-dandruff. Someone might say, I need something that smells good, like herbal essences. So again, you can't say that, look, just because there's so many, you say, okay, if I want anti-dandruff that smells good, that's this, then I need to read the back, I need to do my research, and then I need to try it out. Once I try it out, and I have read it, I've done my research, I've used the other ones, then I got a skin problem, somebody else used it, they got a skin problem, then, so do you see there's a compounding of evidence. Now, look, there's never going to be anything definitive. The definitive thing that people say is God comes down and he says, yo, how's it going? I'm God, believe in me. But the whole purpose here is, it's life is a test. Like we as Muslims and other people of faith, we believe life is a test. Just like in an exam, you're asked a question, you're not given the answers. That's the logic behind it. It's an examination. So yes, in the examination, you'll use, okay, I read this in a textbook, I watched a YouTube video about this, I asked my dad about this, okay, my teacher said this is a 3-mark essay question, okay, I can do this, beginning, middle, end, boom, 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 boom. So you're equipped, and you know, logically you can say, you know what, most likely, like I don't know about you, but there came a time that I would know at the end of the exam, if I had 15 minutes left, at the end I could say, I know I got that right, that's, I could estimate my own marks, and I'd know roughly what I got. It's the same. It's the same with this. That I think, don't become...
You're sure of something that you're right.
Yeah.
But you believe that you're right. You don't know that you're right.
Of course, but sure with the inference to the best explanation. That when we're looking logically, rationally, we have, look, logic and rationality is something everybody has. And the thing is, look, somebody who's created us, he's put these things within us. Like Justin Barrett, he's from Oxford, he did a study, and he concluded that every person intuits a belief in God. It's intuitively within us. You can check this later. Type in Justin Barrett, predisposition of believing in God. So it's like a sign within us that there is a yearning of God. Then we see evidence around us. Then we have logic and reasoning. So things add up, and for us to say, you know what, no, just because there's so many, it's fine. Look, as love and respect for all, of course, we respect people of other faiths, you have a morality and you're doing this. Like, to be honest, when I see people that are practicing Christians, it makes me happy. At a time where people are becoming depressed and suicidal, I'm glad you have some form of morality. So look, it's not that, but when we're talking about truth and when we're talking about, evidence and stuff like that, we have to be a bit more precise. And that's the angle that I'm coming from. I agree with you, and you did make a good point. But of course, it is a belief. But that belief is predicated on our rationality, our logic.
Yes, but the logic is not like completely 100%. I think that's very important for people to understand that religion is belief. Certainty.
Yes.
No, you do not know. You believe.
So belief based upon rationality, testimony. Rationality, testimony, you've got empirical evidence, you've got philosophical evidence, you've got teleological evidence, cosmological evidence. So again,
it's not the evidence of there should be something, there could be something, but it's not the evidence of there is Allah like you think He is, like you imagine, like everybody else imagines something. There's no evidence of that. There's just simply that you think there's evidence that there could be a higher form of God.
But then when you say evidence, what do you mean by evidence?
That's the tricky question. Evidence is something, it's hard to define. I don't think that those evidences of Thomas von Aquin you started with, that of the mover and stuff, that those can be called a true evidence. I think evidence is something that if you would now tell me something, and then later on you would say that you did not say that, and I would pick the camera and tell you that you exactly did it, have like some footage, which counts as evidence. I think that's true evidence.
Give me an example.
That was an example.
No, that's a specific example. I mean something that we can apply to religion or to God. Evidence of God, like you said.
I do not have evidence for God. That's the point.
So what would you regard as evidence for God? What fulfills the criteria of evidence that you're seeking?
That I'm seeking. You mean like evidence for me that there is a God?
So you said to me that look, the argument from contingency is not evidence. You don't regard that as evidence. I would argue.
Sorry.
So I would argue that's philosophical and rational evidence. But you're saying, but it's not evidence. I say, okay, that's interesting. what do you mean when you say evidence? So for you, what is regarded as evidence for God?
Wait, for you that's 100% evidence from Thomas Aquinas?
No. For the evidence that I said, so you've got the argument from rationality.
Yes.
Yeah. You've got the argument from philosophical. Then you've got the arguments of design. Then you've got the argument from cosmology.
That's evidence for a possible higher life. That's not the evidence for a specific God.
So that's why I'm saying these are evidences for, say, a necessary being. Yeah. Then from necessary being, once we've established that there is a necessary being, you call him the prime mover, but that's different. That's not what I subscribe to. The necessary being, I think, for me, is more veracious. And even the contingency argument is the strongest argument that's out there that I've come across. So that philosophically ration, because the thing Jarvis is, when we're talking about evidence, that's subjective to a lot of people. That's why I asked you, and maybe I should have asked you at the beginning, that what do you mean by evidence? For Christopher Hitchens, he is an atheist. I don't believe in God. But his brother Peter Hitchens is a Christian. Somebody asked him, what's the evidence? He said, look, that's subjective. For me, the evidence was experiential. So for some people, evidence they'll regard as experiential. For some people, like if someone is scientific, they will be an empiricist. They say, I need empirical evidence. I need something I put underneath a microscope.
Yes.
For, say, a philosopher, he says, I need like syllogism. Like anything that begins to exist has a cause. The universe began to exist, therefore the universe has a cause. So that's the Ghazalian syllogism. So for some people, they'd say, this is deductive reasoning. Deductive reasoning, they would say, evidentially is more stronger than inductive reasoning. Because induction is based upon the small or the less, and you're extrapolating that to the wide, the micro to the macro.
Yes.
Yeah? But deduction is different. It's actually more voracious. So I would actually argue that the rational and the philosophical arguments here are actually more stringent. That's why we're on the topic of empiricism and evidence, because I would say that's actually very strong evidence, frankly. So that's why it's very interesting to find out what you deem as evidence. You could even say personally. It doesn't have to be something like for everybody. You, Jarvis, what would you like to see?
Evidence for a God or for your specific God?
For God. For my God is your God. It's look, God. We believe, look, God is God. He's the creator of the heavens and the earth. Certain people will put restrictions on him, and that's where the differences happen. But God, I mean, people believe he's all-powerful, all-seeing, all-hearing. That's pretty much standard for most people. So a God that's all-powerful, all-seeing, all-hearing. What evidence would you require?
I guess it should be something experiential. I don't think that people telling me to believe this, or people trying to do some evidence like cosmologic or telelogic, which just is, as I said before, like an empty space at the beginning where you can like insert everything you want to, like the Big Bang, your God, any other God.
We can come back to that later, because yeah.
So yeah, for me it's experiential, so empiristic, I guess. For the evidence of God.
You said experiential.
No. Where was it? Empiristic?
Yeah, empiricism. Yeah, in terms of empirical evidence, that's different. Are you conflating the two or both? One is experience. So empirical evidence is stuff that can be scientifically tested. You put under a microscope, or you use the kind of criteria of science.
But that would be perfect if you could scientifically prove God.
Right. So the first thing is experiential. So if you think back in our discussion, I gave you an evidence. It wasn't necessarily, well, it's an evidence according to yourself, which I said that you can go home and you can actually communicate with God yourself.
But it's a monologue. He's not talking back, right? I don't want to call that communication.
No, but the thing, Jarvis, is that when we look, the purpose, when we look at life is a test. That's not going to change. Like evidence for God, like your belief in God, if you've seen God, it's no longer a test. It's like me sitting in an exam and they've shown me the results. How are you testing my abilities? So that is like a maxim. As a believer, that life is a test. You're never going to see God. Like that, seeing God In fact, that's not even a criteria in science as well. Quarks, we don't see quarks, we theorize quarks. Yeah, we say, okay, the nucleus is made from quarks, 6 types of quarks, and then you've got bosons, there's numerous types of bosons, and like that. We don't see bosons, we don't see quarks. We theorize based upon you've got the atom, it reacts in this way. Okay, let's try it a few times. Boom, it must have these small things. If it has those small things, they must have this charge. Can we measure that charge? Yes. Dark energy. We haven't seen dark energy. We can't do experiments with dark energy. Wow, that was loud.
Yeah.
It's quite talented. Big Bang.
Let me ask you a different question.
Sure.
What has to happen for you to stop believing in God? What is something of an event that has to happen to you, or something that has to be found for you to stop believing in God, or to believe that your religion is simply not true? It was man-made, it was created for, as I said, for moral purposes, to control society. What has to happen?
The thing is that question, I think.
Outer life from outer space? With us?
No, but that's the thing. Look, sorry, so say that last bit again?
Like aliens. Life from outer space. So
yeah.
Different life forms. Is there anything that could happen that you would stop believing?
So that, based upon the argument that I've given you from dependency, whatever the... Okay, perfect. So when we're looking at the creation, anything that we see around us, we can classify it in one of 3 types of existences: dependent, independent, or impossible existence. So whether it's aliens or whether it's something else, they're still going to be dependent. And again, that argument from dependency, that there has to be an end, logically, rationally, to the end. There has to be an end to that chain. So whether we find out it's aliens, whether there's a singularity of this or that, that's not going to change. Because let's just say you think that there's a Big Bang, and I'm saying, look, there's rationality and logic, and the person, no, the universe came from illogic and irrational. I say, look, I stand in a better position than yourself, because you're saying that everything that you see, the design and everything around you, is illogical, it's irrational. Which, no, it's not what you're saying. I'm giving an argument of somebody else that might, that might follow that chain of that chain of argumentation. That's what they would say. So for me, it's impossible. Just like it's an impossibility that there's an infinite regress of dependent things. It's impossible. There has to be an end. There has to be a necessary being. That's why whether it's great philosophers, whether it's great theologians or whatnot, there has to be an end. Otherwise, it's ridiculous. It's an impossibility. We can't be here. You and I can't be standing here having this conversation as contingent, dependent beings if there's an infinite regress of contingent beings.
Yeah, but you still didn't answer my question. Is there something that could happen that you stop believing?
Yeah. So to answer your question, is just like this is an impossibility. It doesn't make sense. So for me, there being no God it doesn't make sense. They can't. There's nothing. They're just like there's no evidence that can be that I can think of that would take that away, because I've hit it from every single angle, philosophically, rationally, in terms of textual criticism, in terms of prophecies and the likes, every angle. In fact, even testimony now. Who's the person telling me that, oh, there's an alien and this and that? There's an element of testimony, and I would argue that testimony in Islam is actually more stringent than testimony that we take. Oh, I go to school, my professor tells me that there is Alaska, shows me a textbook, there's a picture on there. I've never been Alaska. That evidence is very weak, and I don't know that teacher. Maybe she's an agent sent by, I don't know, the Matrix or whatever. So the point is, but in Islam, our testimony is actually more stringent, is actually more stronger. We say, okay, who's this person that's narrated such and such saying? What's their name, family, tribe? And Islamic chain of narration actually scrutinizes reliability of that person as well. Yeah, were they time? Matan, sanad, matan, tarikh, which is the chain, the matan, the text, and the age, and the time. Was that person even alive at that time? So our stringent nature of even testimony evidence is actually, I would argue, much more stringent than even testimony that's used in peer review studies till today, induction process. Like science is all well and good, but we then have to go into science and the scientific method, which again has so many different limitations. And to rely solely upon science, in fact, even as evidence, like even science can't prove science using the scientific method. Testimony, it uses testimony, can't be proven using the scientific method. The Higgs boson, like yes, we discovered it, but first we theorized it. We didn't have evidence for it. Like everything that's like M theory, string theory, multiverse theory, these are all postulations. Yet there's no evidence for them. And at the moment, we're actually going against the procedure of science, which is the falsification test. That you have evidence, you prove it to be false. But these guys have something and they're proving it to be true. So even our understanding of science is not the science that we had back in the days. Yeah, the science of, say, Karl Popper. And even look, if a person says that, look, we're, they're so, mindless, materialistic, unguided, atoms. How can we even start trusting our own psyche? Because if we're just random rearrangement of atoms, who's to say that, we can trust even this sort of stuff? And when it comes to people, like the Mandela effect, people can, they've tried to change scripture and do this and do that. But the thing with Islam is, number one, it's simple. Number two, it's memorized. So human beings can burn the Quran and they can do this and do that. But things are, number one, intuited. You can memorize it. Intuited, memorize, and in fact the Quran is so fantastic and amazing. You can burn the Quran and all the other holy scriptures. The Quran is the only one that can be written word for word.
Because it's just one version of it?
No, because it's preserved. It's preserved and the other books aren't preserved. So that's one of the beauties. Like if you're claiming that something is from God, there needs to be some unique things. And that's why at the beginning I mentioned many unique things that are present in Islam that others don't claim. They simply don't claim. That's why when you said, look, other people will make that claim, they won't. And you will see this. You will see this, that you will ask them, look, how is the Bible preserved? Like, is it a live language? Like this, you can ask them your own questions. And look, it's not me telling you, okay, do this. There's no kind of cajoling. I'm not cajoling you to kind of do things a certain way. You do the way you want. You want to speak to God when you go home, you're saying it's a one-way conversation. Look, the way God will respond to you is through means. That's why even when He communicated with us initially, it was through a holy scripture, was through a prophet. It'll always be through means, because the maximum of life is a test. So you will never get that thing, but you will have an experience. You'll have itminan, contentment in the heart. Because you're saying experience, like majority of the things, Jarvis, are actually not seen. Yeah, our dreams, imagination, consciousness, feelings, ideas, these things are actually not seen. So if you rely on solely things that are seen, things that can be put under a microscope, then we're seriously limiting existence and life. That's why I would say the initial arguments, deductive, philosophical, rational, these all compounded together, which is more than scientific, frankly. Because I can give you like the Brontosaurus. There was a discovery, they found bones of a dinosaur called the Brontosaurus, and the guy who discovered it, it was a forgery, because the Brontosaurus was the Apatosaurus and the Camarasaurus. He found one set of bones which had the head missing, so he added to the Apatosaurus, he added to the Camarasaurus, and he passed it off as a Brontosaurus. He got peer reviewed, and it got put up, and then fantastic. But then people found out that it was a forgery. Yeah, and then even till today, the Brontosaurus is still see sculptures of it and stuff like that. But if you check, it's been taken out from the academic literature. Actually, not there. So the point that I'm trying to say is that the evidence that's used even in science, is not scrutinized like, say, Islam is scrutinized. And no problem, scrutinize Islam. But Islam lives up to that scrutiny And it gives you that layer of evidence in every facet. If you're saying, no, I want to see God, no. I want to experience God, yes. I want to see the prophecies, I want to see if they're logical and this, that. I want to see if I can live as a good Muslim and this and that. Yes, 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 yes. So in that sense, I think that's the beauty here again that Islam has to offer that these guys want. I can say that confidently, and look, I can be refuted. I'm a YouTuber as well. I have over 700,000 subscribers. Yeah. Now I'm not saying that as a proud thing, but what I'm saying is that look, my words carry a risk. If I make a claim, people will come and say, "Oh, you said this." Videos of refutation can be made against me and stuff like that. So I'm making these bold claims. They're all bold claims. I have no issue making these claims because even when you go home, you'll find this clip, and then you'll say, "You know what? Let me check out what he said. Brontosaurus? Where do you get that from?" Then he said Apatosaurus and Camarasaurus. He gave that chain of narration. Let me find you. Check all these things, and you'll see the veracity and the accuracy of Islam is exactly what we're in need of today. And yes, maybe you guys came here and we came to the side and you guys are speaking about this, but sit on it like a chicken on an egg. Sit on it, and I promise you, the things will open up to you more. Just stay as sincere as you are now, and stay open to it, and you will see. You'll say, okay, because I've given you. So I sussed you up. I'm dealing with the philosopher. It's quoting Kant. So I gave you the juicy bits. So check these out, and hopefully you'll appreciate what's definitely discussed.
I'll start charging.
Huh?
I'll start charging you guys now.
But Jarvis, really nice to speak to you, my friend.
That's nice. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no. Take care.
Tell me your name again on YouTube. So.
Yeah. So Smile2Jannah. Smile and then a number 2. And then Jannah, Jann.
This one?
That's the one. See? 774, yeah.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I'm gonna give you back the jacket now.
Yeah. Oh. The thing is, because I knew we were gonna have this conversation.
Are you done yet?
Yeah. Because I knew, I was like, and I saw you shivering. I was like, you know what?
Yeah, thank you very much. That was really nice.
Yeah.